You're listening to Brandon Sports Talk, interviewing professional athletes and Paralympians and Olympians. And now for your professional athlete interview and your host, Brandon Pate. Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Australian Olympian disc thrower, Julian Wruck. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in competing in the sport of track and field?
So, when I was younger, I played a lot of team sports, basketball, rowing, things like that, rugby when I was really young. But when I started throwing discus, what I loved about it was that it was an individual sport. So, I got to control everything. You get the discus to yourself, you get 1 minute in the ring, there's the concrete ring. The discus always same diameter, same size, same weight. You walk into the ring, you're in 100% control. So, if you go out and play on a basketball court and you play your best game, but you still lose, well, you don't really have the control over how well the rest of your team plays and the other team. But discus, you're always 100% in control. So if you throw well or you don't throw very well, you only have one person to look back as to why that is. And I loved that kind of 100% creative control.
While in college, what was that experience like first going to Texas Tech to compete and then going to UCLA?
That was wild. I didn't really have much idea of what it was going to be like because from Australia, we don't have the same level of sports facilities and the same size stadiums and whatnot. So I just heard that it was a really great experience. It was a really good opportunity to go and throw discus or play any sport on American scholarship. So right after high school, I went over on a visit and I was just mind blown. I mean, better facilities than the best facilities in Australia. Just every single university I went to, and yeah, I was just absolutely amazed. The culture was more different than I expected, but Australians, we grew up on American movies, so I kind of knew a little bit what to expect, but it was a very worthwhile experience. It helped me to grow up. I went over to America when I was 17, came back at 23, and I felt like I transitioned from, a teenager who didn't know much about the world to a man, essentially. I learned a lot about the world. So it was a wonderful experience.
Of course, how was that transition, as you said, going from being from Australia to then going to college in the US and going to UCLA?
Yeah. So, I mean, at first I had to get used to the food and then the different kind of social circumstances. People use different kind of jokes and people use a few different words to talk about training. And then there's just the priorities of track and field athletes there and the student athletes. So, there's a certain amount of time you got to dedicate to your studies, certain amount of time you got to dedicate to your training. Um, it was kind of a tough transition at first, but once I realized that if I throw well, if I compete well, then the university does well. So they will do everything they possibly can to support me in doing that. They give you, free physiotherapy, free doctor, free medical if you need. They give you all of the support you need to get good grades and to throw well. The moment I understood that, I thought, okay, this is great because I want to throw well as well. So I just tunnel visioned. I want to throw the discus as far as I possibly can in the next few years. And yeah, and it was wonderful from then on. And by the time I got to UCLA, I had already had 2 years at Texas Tech. I had won an NCAA championships, a D1 championships, and so the coach at UCLA just gave me so much freedom. He's like, all right, I can see you want to throw far. I don't have to push you or anything like that. Use me as a resource. Tell me what you need, and I'll just drive you from there. And that was just, yeah, it was amazing.
Of course, what was that experience like for you, having that experience at Texas Tech to then help you to come to UCLA to compete?
So Texas Tech, I already understood how the season worked. You know, there's the preseason, the off season, the preseason. Then you've got the conference, then regionals, then nationals. Those are the big three competitions. And I kind of knew what the format was like. I knew what was expected of me. Um, yeah, the first year at Texas Tech, I was still kind of getting my feet, didn't quite know how hard to push at what time of the season or what kind of program to do. But it was, yeah, it was good preparation. So that once I got to UCLA, my first year at UCLA was a redshirt year. My second year at UCLA, when the first year actually competing for UCLA was my best year as a discus thrower because I knew what to expect. The coach gave me unlimited amounts of freedom to just program differently and throw at the times of day that I wanted and that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, my time at UCLA will be treasured very deeply. I've got some wonderful memories there.
How was that experience like getting to compete in Drake Stadium at UCLA?
Drake Stadium is amazing. Drake Stadium is, for those who don't know, it's like there's seating on just one side, and the rest of the stadium is just open. And so you can see almost all of UCLA. You can see these like giant green fields next to you. A few sides are covered by like these beautiful eucalyptus trees. You've got the concrete stand where everyone sits, the bleachers, and then you've got the a few of the academic buildings in the distance. So scenic and so beautiful. And we weren't just competing there; we were training there every single day. You get to throw at Drake Stadium, and there's also a gym, like a weight room up the top of the stadium, like in sort of inside the wall. It looks like it's just a shed, but once you open up the doors, you walk inside. It's a gym, and it's yeah, like I have great memories of training there late at night, early in the morning. Because it's a public stadium, there are some celebrities that jog around the track as well. So I remember the first time I went, it was like 6 a.m. I was getting a throw session in before class, and I was just warming up my arm in the ring, and then I look over and I just see Dr. Dre jog by me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really cool. So yeah, excellent experience.
While in college, what was that experience like getting to compete for NCAA national championships?
I really like the NCAA season, probably more than the international season, more than the Australian national season. I really like the NCAA format because it's like you've got so many athletes that are all roughly your age. You know, you've got, 18 to 24, 25-year olds, and they're all training year round just for the NCAA championships. That's all they care about. And so there's like a really intense level competition that you don't really get at any other level. You don't get it in, high school in Australia. You don't get it in university in Australia. You don't get it in the international scene because every country prepares their athletes different. But in America, you've got a few hundred Division One universities. They've all got athletes that are training up for the NCAA championships, and yeah, it's the excitement that builds up throughout the season because you're tracking everyone else's best throws. You're like, oh, that person just threw 61. Oh, that person threw 62. There'll be a threat when it comes around to conference championships, and then you check everyone's conference score. A month before the NCAA championships. I think it's the most exciting format I've ever competed in.
Of course, as an athlete, what was that experience like competing for a national championship?
For a national championship, yeah. You mean the Australian National Championship?
Hmm.
Um, Australian Nationals, I it's a very interesting thing returning home and then throwing because for me there was never, or maybe only a couple of times, much competition. I mean, Matt Denny, for example, he's the best discus thrower in Australia right now, and there's him throwing mid 60s, and then the next best guy is throwing like 58 meters, so it's like a huge gap. And it was like that a couple of years for me. I think one year I won by almost 10 meters, which is like what, 30 feet for those who don't know meters. So it's a great experience. I love Australian track and field. It's like a small community. once you've been in track and field for a few years in the Australian scene, you kind of know everybody. So you're just saying hi to everyone when you show up to meets and stuff. It's great, but the competition just was never really there. I'm not much.
What was that feeling like the first time you made the national team for Australia to compete in track and field as a disc thrower?
That was a very proud moment for me. Um, I had set my sights on the Olympics for a long time. Like I just once I went over to America, I just thought, okay, this is my life. I'm a discus thrower now. I'm gonna put all my eggs in one basket and just see how far I can throw. And yeah, I remember it was late 2011. I think it was November or December 2011. I threw the qualifying mark for the Olympics, and then I won the national championships, and that was just the moment. I won the selection trials. And the moment I knew that I'd qualified for sure, it was yeah probably one of the proudest moments of my life.
Of course, what was that feeling like getting to compete in the Commonwealth Games and getting to go to India to compete?
Yeah, India was my first senior international team, and that was wonderful. I went to the Commonwealth Youth Games in 2008, and then the Commonwealth Games, the Open Championships in 2010. India is an amazing place. It's really a culture shock too. Like you walk through the slums of India, and my goodness, it's just nothing like you've ever seen before. Yeah, I was 18 at the Commonwealth Games, so I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't throw particularly well. I kind of choked a little bit, but it was a great experience because I got to feel the pressure of an international level competition, which is yeah, was very important. It was probably a stepping stone to me throwing much bigger distances in the future.
How was that experience like getting to go to the World Junior Championship and getting to win bronze?
Yeah, so I mean, I won bronze and I'm sort of happy about that, but I'm still a little bit disappointed because I was really close to if I had thrown the best throw I had thrown that season just 3 weeks prior, I would have come first. And I wish I had thrown better on the day. I'm sure everybody wished they had thrown better on the day, but it was Moncton was an amazing place. The World Junior Championships was pretty cool because that was a lot of my heroes, even though they were my same age that I was throwing against. I had been following a lot of those guys for many years and trying to emulate their techniques and stuff. So yeah, I mean, to know that I was competitive with them, that was the first time that I had hope, like real sort of tangible hope that, oh, these guys are the best in the world for under 20. And I just came third, and I was within reaching distance of first place. That was the first competition that gave me hope that maybe I can actually be a pro discus thrower. I can actually do this for a living. So that was, yeah, that was very gratifying.
What was that training process like for you to prepare to make it to the Olympics?
So when I went home from Texas Tech, I had 6 months or about 7 months between going home from my second year of Texas Tech and starting at UCLA as a redshirt. So I had 7 months back home in Brisbane. I had nothing to do. I wasn't working a job. I was just, you know, training, basically just training 24/7. So I wrote this program, really hardcore program, 7 months, and that's all that I did. It was probably 4 or 5 hours of training almost every single day. When I wasn't training, I was watching throws videos of myself, trying to refine my technique. And I improved from throwing consistently 56, 57 meters in training to throwing 60, 61 meters in training. So it was like a 3 or 4 meter improvement over that period of time. And I almost never went backwards from there. Like it was just this huge jump forward that I just grinded and grinded and grinded, really worked on my weaknesses. And it was mostly done in that 7 months. I mean, I trained up my whole life. Track and field, anyone who's been in track and field for a while knows that it takes a lifetime to master a skill. But that 7 month period was really the momentum I needed leading up to the qualifying distance.
Of course, leading up to the Olympics, what was that feeling like getting to train and knowing that your hard work could pay off to make it to the Olympics?
Yeah, so leading up to it, I think I went to Melbourne. It was in December, and I didn't even, I was just going down there to see some friends, and I had to get my passport renewed. And there was a competition there that I stayed for. My talked me into staying. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll stay for a competition, no big deal. That was the competition in which I threw the qualifying distance, and yeah, I still amazing memories. I stayed with a guy called Gus Popolo. He's a discus coach in Australia, or a throws coach in Australia. That was really awesome. And then the moment like I threw that qualifying distance, he's like, "All right, all you need to do now is come top two at the selection trials, and you've made it to the Olympics." And I'm like, "All right, sweet, awesome." So yeah, wonderful.
What was that feeling like when you did make it to the Olympics and you knew all your hard work paid off?
Yeah, really gratifying. I mean, it was. I mean, each athlete, I think, focuses on a different aspect of their performance. For some people, it's Olympics or bust. It's like all about the Olympics. For me, it was a wonderful experience. I always focused on just throwing a big distance. I like the distance. I like the tape measure more than the medals or the level of performance. So it was amazing to be able to compete against the athletes that I had been looking up to for so many years. So yeah, the feeling was more excitement. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get to meet Vigilis Alekna. I'm going to get to meet Robert Harting. I'm going to get to meet Go Cantor. All these guys that I worship, I'm going to get to meet them in person, and I did. And so yeah, it was a very exciting feeling.
What was that feeling like for you getting to put on that track and field kit with the Olympic rings on it and having the Australian country on the chest?
Yeah, pretty awesome. I mean, it's representing your own country is something that I think a lot of people from a young age, even if they're not even interested in sport, just getting to represent your country for something is very sort of a big amount of pride, I think. I mean, prior to that, I had represented, uh, you know, in high school, you go through these various different levels of competition. It's regionals, and then you go to state championships, and then you go to national championships. And each time you represent a bigger and bigger chunk of your area. And to represent Australia at a senior level, it was just like, all right, this is the pinnacle. This is as high as you get. So yeah, it was amazing.
While at the Olympics, what were some of your favorite memories or moments, and how was your competition like?
Um, my competition, I didn't actually throw very well. I'd gotten glandular fever, I think. What do you guys call it? Mononucleosis, mono, leading up to the competition. So I actually was pretty sick, and I didn't throw particularly well. I came 28th, I think, but I I had some amazing memories. Probably my best memory was the dining hall. The food was amazing. There was a McDonald's in the corner of the athlete village, and you could just get unlimited McDonald's for free. It was so good. So yeah, and it was also just getting to hang out with my idols, and also just talking to some of the more experienced throwers and getting to learn from them. That was yeah, pretty great memory.
How does it feel to have OLY behind your last name and have Olympian, known as the Olympian?
It's interesting. I try not to identify with it too much because as proud as I was and as amazing of an experience as it was for me, it's a stage of life. I was extremely passionate about that. I loved being an Olympian, but I don't want to hang on to that as like, the only achievement that I'll ever have in my life because I think that a lot of people they kind of get stuck on, what they've achieved in the past. And it's nothing to diminish. It's a wonderful achievement, but it's also something that I think what a wonderful opportunity I had, what wonderful luck I had to live a life which allowed me to qualify for the Olympics. What a wonderful opportunity to travel overseas, not just in the Olympics, but in all my competitions. And that part of my life is over now. I no longer throw discus. I occasionally do a bit of coaching, but essentially discus is over. So I look back on that with fond memories, but to still call myself an Olympian is occasionally I'll mention it in conversation here and there, but otherwise I just move on, just live life as a human being who remembers the Olympics in the past but isn't constantly holding on to it.
What was that moment I made it moment like for you, whether it was at the Olympics or throughout your career?
That would have been the year after the Olympics in 2013. That was my best season. Um, I decided to gain some weight because my technique was pretty good, but people were out throwing me just because they were bigger and stronger. And strength didn't come to me as easily as it did to a lot of the other guys. So I was starting to push harder in the gym, eat more food. I gained a bit of weight. And early on in the season, before anyone had really thrown big competitions yet, for a short period of time, I was ranked number one in the world. And the moment I was thinking, like, wow, I threw 66 meters, 23 centimeters early on in the year. And I was ranked number one. And I finished out that season ranked number four at the end of the year, once everyone had thrown their season. But just the moment I was ranked number one, and then it was like a month went by, and then 2 months went by, and I was still number one. I was thinking, like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, like I even if somebody overtakes me, even if a few people overtake me, like I'm at this moment in time, I'm throwing the discus further than anyone else. Like I have to have made it, and I'm only 21 years old, and I've got another decade of improving to go. So I thought, um, yeah, that was the moment I figured I'd made it.
Of course, what was that feeling like for you making it to number one and having it for so long?
Um, yeah, it was like during every season, I was always like statistics obsessed. So I would love to keep up to date with like who was throwing the biggest throw of the year. And then if somebody would overtake them that year, they'd go, okay, now Gerd Kant is number one, or now Robert Harting is number one, or now whoever it is, Vitaly Selekna is number one. And to be number one, it felt kind of surreal because I'm like, wait a second, I didn't think about myself as being amongst this level of competition, this caliber of competition. It was really kind of like almost unsettling. I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm one of those guys now. I mean, I still don't hold myself among the Julius Selekna or the best of the best, but just it was surreal would be the short way to describe it.
Of course, for my listeners that don't know, how do you compete in disc throwing?
You compete well. Every competitor gets six throws, so you get three preliminary rounds. Each person has their turn to throw, three different rounds. It doesn't matter what your consistency is like, it's just based on the best throw of the entire competition. So you can throw five fouls, which is where you throw out of the sector or you step over the line. But based on your best throw, the top 12 competitors get another three throws. Or in some competitions, the top eight competitors get another three throws. And based on the best throw that you have, you're ranked first to eighth. And yeah, so it can be a bit nerve wracking because if you're trying to throw really, really far, you're going to be spinning as fast as you can. And there's going to be a speed accuracy trade off, which means you're going to be less likely to, uh, if you're trying to throw as far as you can, there's a low probability that you're going to get it absolutely perfect, which means that it's a bit risky. So you've got six throws to try and get one good throw out. So it's a bit nerve wracking, but every thrower has their own strategy, I suppose.
Of course, for you, how do you go about keeping your balance when spinning around so fast so you don't fall?
Practice. There's no better way to say it. You just need to practice thousands and thousands of throws, about 10,000 throws a year, 10,000, hard throws a year, max effort throws. And it just becomes second nature. The movement becomes second nature to you. Once you've got a good seasoned discus thrower that's thrown tens of thousands of throws, they can tell you whether it's a good throw the moment it leaves their hand before it even lands. I mean, balance isn't so much the issue as tension and timing and other things. Initially, balance is quite difficult, but once you get the hang of it, balance is kind of easy. You just get used to spinning.
What is that like, obviously, getting to compete against different countries like US and Canada?
Yeah, so every country you can tell they have their strengths and weaknesses. A lot of the American guys, for example, are really strong, physically strong. They spend a lot of time in the weight room, um, as opposed to like, if you compete against Europeans, for example, they're often not quite as strong. It depends on the country, I suppose. Um, Germans and Lithuanians, not quite as physically strong necessarily, but they've got finesse. There's kind of like they spend more time throwing and less time in the weight room. So every country you can tell they have their strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, I mean, I like competing against the Americans because uh, track and field is not as big of a sport in America and Australia as it is in Europe. I mean, it is when it comes to sprinting, but the throws, for example, it's traditionally not as popular. And so the throws are trying to figure out how do those Europeans do it. Obviously, America's got amazing shot putters, but discus, javelin, hammer, not quite at the same standard. And so we always just sat back and talked about, how we can go overseas and try to get some technical tips from the European guys.
Of course, what is that experience like getting to meet your fans and having them recognize you and ask for your autographs and photos with you?
It always made me feel a bit weird because I felt like, I mean, I always gave autographs if people asked me and whatnot, but I feel like like I was one of these people. I was somebody in the crowd asking for autographs of people, and so now I'm autographing. It's like, wait a second, I'm not special. Like, why am I autographing you? If you train hard, you can be in the same position I am. So it just felt kind of like it wasn't quite right. Well, I mean, it was still, I suppose, it was a proud moment. It was a wonderful feeling, but I just felt a bit weird because I remember growing up in Australia just not being particularly good and just yeah worshiping these guys and just trying to get their autographs when I went to a track and field meet as well. But then you look from the other side and you realize like oh these are just any one of these athletes could be a superstar one day.
Who are some of the people that you look up to in the sport of track and field?
Ah, many people. So I always worshipped Vigilius Elecna. Probably he was like the number one discus thrower back when I was getting into discus. He was best in the world, the most throws over 70 meters, I think, to this day. Um, I mean, I look up to anyone who trains hard, competes well, stays humble as well. I mean, I really like the people that aren't doing it to maximize gold medals necessarily, but they're trying to master their craft. They're just trying to maximize their mastery over the particular skill that they're training. And you can see that in certain people. You can watch certain people and be like, okay, this person has truly mastered what they're doing. They're not just trying to win; they actually are in love with their event. Those are the people I really look up to. So, I mean, there's too many to name. So I'll just leave it at that.
Looking back on your career, what are some of the things that you would have told your younger self now that you know now?
Oh, start meditating. I learned how to practice Vipassana meditation when I was older for stress relief and improvements in concentration. That is probably the most valuable skill I've ever learned. I would say learn Vipassana meditation. And that would have helped me focus in competition and not give into the nerves. And it would have also just improved my sleep quality and all kinds of stuff. Besides that, I suppose don't overtrain. I usually pushed my body a little bit too hard and I got injured too many times because I felt like I wasn't as naturally talented as a lot of the other athletes, which is probably true. So I had to make up for it by training extra hard and putting in more hours. And as a result, my body just couldn't keep up and started breaking. So probably don't overtrain. Just if you're a bit wrecked from training, just take a day off. Just prioritize sleep. Make sure you always get protein in. Don't go 6 hours without eating. Um, that and meditation would probably have gone a long way, I think.
What has the transition been like after the Olympics for you?
Difficult getting back into ordinary life. I mean, after the Olympics, I kept competing in discus for a little while. I had two world championships I competed in, another Commonwealth Games. But once I realized that my track and field career is kind of not something I want to cling on to, I need to move on in life. It was kind of difficult because I just had to get a regular job back home and I couldn't do what I love every single day. But it was fine. I mean, it's part of growing up and just moving on in life is part of just maturing and realizing, like, all right, I have to find myself in other disciplines, other fields of life. And that's what I've done.
Of course, how has that transition been like from retiring from the sport you love of disc throwing to life after disc throwing?
So the reason I retired primarily is because I got a digestive illness called ulcerative colitis, and it finished my career basically. Like I just couldn't recover. I was getting injured. I didn't know what it was. It took me a few years to diagnose, and then it took a while to accept that because I think a lot of athletes, when you're at a high level, obsess over your event, you obsess over your sport, you train it 24/7. When you're not on the field training, you're still training up here, you're still thinking about it. You think about what can I do to improve my performance tomorrow? What can I do to, improve my diet or improve my technique a little bit? And the moment you have to let that go, it's quite difficult. For me, it was quite difficult. So it was like a transitionary period into non-athletic life, and it took me some time, but I was able to do it. It was I'm in a really good place now, and part of that, as I've mentioned before, was me discovering Vipassana meditation. That was a discovery that I do not take for granted because it was a wonderful aid in transitioning to an ordinary life, and it helped me come to terms with the fact that everybody gets these wonderful opportunities in life, or not everyone. Some people get these wonderful opportunities in life, and once they're over, they're over. And I look back on Discus with fond memories, rather than initially I had a little bit of bitterness because I couldn't keep doing Discus for the rest of my life, for the rest of my young life. Um, but I think I've transitioned into a really, really healthy part of my life now.
As a retired athlete, what has it been like seeing how discus throwing and throwing in general in track and field has changed from when you were throwing to now?
Oh, it's at a really high standard right now. There are strong years and weak years, but I mean, Discus particularly, the guys are getting taller and taller and bigger and bigger. So I think the two number one and number two guys in the sport right now are a guy called Daniel Stahl and Christian Che, and they're like 6'10" or 6'9" and 6'8", and they're huge. They're just like I can't compete with those. Even if I was at my best and I kept kept throwing it would be hard to imagine competing with those guys. So um, discus and shot put is out of this world. I mean, the world record's been broken. The number one and number two throwers of all time are both throwing right now at the same time. So it's just um, it's very exciting to watch. I still keep in touch with the elite guys. I still sorry, I keep in touch with the results. And it's really exciting to watch. So it's good to see the sport still strong.
What are some of your future plans moving forward?
Moving forward, long term, I would like to start a meditation retreat center. Meditation was such an important part of my life, discovering that. And it's, as I said, it's probably the most important skill I've ever learned. And I think that teaching the skills of meditation, the attentional skill set, is probably the most valuable contribution I can make to the planet because I think that's what the world needs right now. People need psycho spiritual development, for lack of a better phrase. And so, if I can do anything to make the world a better place, currently, I think the best thing I can do is probably to try and spread the skill that I've learned called Vipassana.
What advice would you give those college athletes out there that are looking to transition and go into competing professionally in track and field?
Um, don't do it unless you love it. If you're just trying to win competitions or trying to get fame or money, then yeah, good luck. I just don't think you can hold it for very long. But if you love the sport, go for it. Be prepared to give it everything. If you don't give it absolutely everything, you won't even have a chance. Give it absolutely everything that you have and enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, whether you succeed or whether you fail. Enjoy the process of giving it your all. Giving something every single ounce of effort that you have is a beautiful experience, even if it doesn't pay off, even if you fail. And so, yeah, you might. A lot of athletes I know they don't quite make the level that they want, and they kind of hold on to that, and they stay a little bit bitter about it. But just if you love what you do, then every single day at training, you will be excited to have an opportunity to improve, and that's something that you've got to pay attention to.
What advice would you give disc throwers and even throwers out there in general looking to make a national team like US, Canada, or even Australia?
Um, throw as often as you can, throw as frequently as you can, and even when you can't throw the implement, the shot put, the discus, the hammer, whatever it is, you can do technical work. You can still do dry turns, throwing without the implement in your hand. Throw and throw and throw. And um, A mistake I made was probably spending a little bit too much time trying to get stronger and more powerful. Just throw. You can throw an enormous distance without being a particularly powerful human being. It's not like weight room numbers aren't important. They are definitely important, but just throw as much as you can and perfect your craft. Become as efficient and precise as you possibly can in your technique, and be open minded. Be open minded to the idea that maybe the technical model you have in your head is not perfect and that there's a better technique out there.
What advice would you give those first time Olympians looking to compete at the Olympics?
Um, don't get distracted. The Olympic Village has all kinds of distractions, delicious free food, amazing like celebrity athletes. And don't be distracted. Keep your eyes on the prize. Stay focused. Keep tunnel vision to your particular sport, your particular event, and enjoy it. Enjoy the experience of standing in front of the entire world, essentially, on television and in the stadium and performing at your best.
What advice would you give those Olympians, such as yourself, going through that retirement process and transitioning from the sport they love to life afterwards?
Um, I would say that you need to find something else. I'd say that generally speaking, people that do well in any sport at an elite level, they have a kind of obsession which it borders on poor mental health. It's not necessarily always mentally healthy. You need to have something else that you can get into and start enjoying. And whether that's starting to balance rather than just obsessing over one thing, you can balance work and social life and family and something else. You can still coach if you like, you can still stay connected to the sport. But I recommend if you want to transition into just an ordinary non Olympian life, the best thing you can do is to find something else to put your time into and recognize that being an elite athlete is no matter how good you are, it's just a one phase of your life. It was never going to last until you were 80. Did you think you were going to be a pro athlete till you're 80? I mean, at some point it's going to end. Look back on those memories fondly and enjoy the transition into the next period of your life.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you out on social media?
So I think my Instagram is jruck, although I don't post much on Instagram. I try not to spend too much time on social media. Um, I mean, if you really want to get in touch, just search Julian Wruck on Facebook and message me if you really want to reach out. But otherwise, I just try not to spend too much time on social media. It's just not too great for putting too much attention onto my phone or onto my computer.
Thank you again, Julian and Wruck, for your interview and best luck in your future, wherever it may hold you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Julian and Wruck, for your interview. Best luck in your future.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.